Well, I think what we're seeing right now is that the United States can't be trusted. The key takeaway here is JD Vance basically admitting that the president views the MOU as an interim measure, not a foundation for a final peace settlement, which is supposed to be, but simply a mechanism to buy time so that they can refill the oil tanks, I think is what JD Vance said. This means that none of this is worth the paper it's written on. None of this is real. The United States isn't seeking peace. The United States is just buying time. So, a strategic pause. No, it's supposed to be a path to peace. And the fact that the United States is keeping its military options open means that the United States isn't seeking peace. Now, you talked about the Wall Street Journal briefing the president. I would say that that's a lie. And I'll tell you why I think that that's a lie. Because what military options can the president be briefed on right now? There are no military options. There is no all-out war option. That's just an absurdity. We already did all-out war. We threw everything we could at Iran and we lost. There's nothing more we can throw at Iran because we're not ready to throw anything at Iran. What are we supposed to do? Put armored divisions on the ground in Iran? It takes us 6 months to mobilize one heavy armor brigade for deployment to Europe. That's under ideal peacetime conditions. 6 months. And now what? We're supposed to mobilize, it's going to take us 700 to 900,000 men to go into Iran. And even that's not going to be enough. We don't have those. We'd have to basically mobilize the reserves, get everything out of mothballs. We're talking, a process that would take years to do. So there is no war option. By the time we prepared to go to war with Iran, the president would be out of office. It would take more than 2 years to mobilize the United States to be prepared to go to war, all-out war with Iran. So it's a straight-up lie, a straight-up fabrication that the Wall Street Journal, and they know it because they're not stupid. These people know what the truth is. They just are simply mouthpiece for the government. Their job is to help the government shape public opinion. You see, the president wants people to believe that he's a strong man, that he has the option to go back to war anytime he wanted. He doesn't have the option. He lost the war. He lost. He just can't admit that he lost. And so, there we are. But the other thing is he's not looking for peace. We now know that to be the case. So what good is the MOU? No good. If the Iranians had a brain on their shoulder, they'd just start bombing right now. Because if there's no MOU, there's no ceasefire. If there's no ceasefire, why let the United States continue to build up its strength? JD Vance said he wants to refill the oil tank, empty the oil tanks, shut down the Strait of Hormuz, shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, and make the United States and Europe scream until Donald Trump acknowledges that there must be a path. But you can't trust Donald Trump. You can't trust anything this administration says. That's where we're at today. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, well, the question is then, why is Iran still very much committed to this? Here is what JD Vance exactly said on the Michelle Knowles show.
So I think what the president has told us to do is use this MOU to sort of refill the world's oil economy, to refill some stocks, and then to see where the hand is. And so,
well, when he says stocks, Scott, that could mean, I guess, stocks in the stock market. It could also mean oil stocks. It could also mean weaponry.
I don't think he means stock. I think he means stockpiles. I think he means, to fill the tanks. But it could mean, anything. But the point is, it means nothing. Right. Because, again, if I were an Iranian and I heard that, I'd say you will never refill anything ever again in your life. Because today you just told me that the MOU is not in effect. So I'm going to resume military up. The war is still on. Sink every ship you can get, shut down every oil production facility you can hit, and make the world scream in pain. That's the only thing Donald Trump will understand. But they're not doing it because Iran is a pragmatic country. Again, thank God the Iranian leadership doesn't think like a Marine. Because if they did, we'd be in perpetual war. Thank God there's people out there who have a more pragmatic mind. And every once in a while when I'm not mad, you caught me today when I'm tired and a little bit angry. So, I'm thinking like, I want to go out and kill something. But instead, the right way to think, and this mirrors, for instance, the thinking of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, everybody's like, why aren't you bombing Europe? Why aren't you shooting the dog? Somebody said that once. I think it was me. Why? Because he's smarter than I am. Because he knows that, the Russia isn't going to be defined by this conflict, that Russia has to look forward, that, he wants people to invest in Russia. And to invest in Russia, you have to have stability. And stability isn't just about domestic stability in Russia. It's about the overall global situation. Russia doesn't want to expand this conflict. Russia is winning a war of attrition against Ukraine and its Western proxies, or Ukraine's a proxy of the West. So what the last thing Vladimir Putin wants to do is expand the conflict. And I think the Iranians are there now. For the first time in 50 years, Iran is able to talk about, getting its economy back on track. They're selling oil. They're able to talk about internal and domestic investments and also external economic relations. And from the Iranian perspective, letting Donald Trump play stupid word games is, it doesn't cost them a cent. If they're attacked, they'll respond. But notice how quickly Iran, doesn't follow through on its previous threats of, if they're going to start the war, we got 1,000 missiles lined up ready to go. Well, they haven't launched 1,000 missiles, and the war has been restarted, 3 times now already. Iran doesn't want to restart the war because Iran understands the United States can't back up the rhetoric with action at this point in time. And so they're seeking to maximize their economic, potential during this time period. And that's what the United States is doing. So they're both going to play games. This is how I see this playing out. There will never be an MOU executed between Donald Trump and Iran. Donald Trump is incapable of executing an MOU. He just proved it. He just proved it. And even if he pretends now suddenly that I'm serious. No, we know Donald Trump is a liar. He just admitted he lied. He signed a document. He signed a document that's supposed to be an agreement. And he just said that nothing in that document is worth the paper it's written on. Nothing. He only signed it to buy time. So it's a lie, straight up lie.
And when you say playing a game, I can kind of see that game shaping up because Iran is behaving quite confidently. They not only with strong statements, but even those statements have a reality to them. For example, Mohammad Ghalibaf also said, to your point about oil, that they are charging a 20% premium and have brought in a massive amount of revenue just in this MOU period alone, while at the same time saying that there's only 60 days for this thing. So after the 60 days is up and none of these commitments are met, then there's a big question mark. But the one thing that's not a question mark in their eyes, or at least in what they're saying, is that they will, they're going to enforce control of the Strait of Hormuz, but perhaps that control gets a little more stringent, given that the U.S., as you said, Scott, is not meeting any of these commitments, which there are commitments. You said it on prior programs. The MOU isn't just it's not just to play around and to pause, but there are commitments that are supposed to be met so that there's a phase 2. So your reaction to this?
Look, the Iranians need to understand this, and I'm sure they do. The MOU talks about 60 days, and Iran's going to maximize what they can get out of that 60 days. While the United States can't win a war, the United States can undo whatever Iran has accomplished in 60 days, and they can undo it in less than 60 days. It's just like Iran, by squeezing the Strait of Hormuz, can undo whatever economic benefits the United States and the world have accrued by replenishing their oil stocks. Neither side wants to go back to full-scale war. The United States can't win it, and Iran, can't afford to sustain it. Because, how does Iran, when all the United States has to do is disengage, and Iran will be isolated as well? Is Iran willing to destroy the state of Israel? So far, the answer is no. So what is the purpose of going to war and continuing the war? None. And the United States can't admit that it lost, so it can't negotiate peace in good faith. I think what we're looking at is when the 60-day comes, you're going to see an extension. Then an extension. Until we get past the midterm elections, and it doesn't matter, because Donald Trump will either have won it and therefore be liberated of the the political harm that will, accrue by telling the truth. And although he can't tell the truth, but at least, he will be able to take certain actions and not have to pay a price at the polls. Or he'll lose and he'll be impeached. And the last thing he'll be worried about is what's going on in Iran. So the Iranians, I just don't see the Iranians, going back to full-scale war. I don't think they want it. I don't see the United States going down that path because we can't win it. And that's where we're at. I think we're just going to be in this perpetual state of, playing games while Iran maximizes its economic benefit and the United States seeks to, as JD Vance said, replenish global oil stocks.
But that leads to inevitably, I guess, back to square one, except the United States, as you said, a lot of these shortages that the U.S. is experiencing takes a bit longer than it takes a pretty long period, correct, for the U.S. to even think about conducting the kind of strikes that it conducted after February 28th and beyond.
Look, the United States is not going to be able to reconstitute the military force that it brought to bear on February 28th for some time now. And that's another reason why this is just going nowhere. This wouldn't be the first time that a hot war degenerated into or coalesced into a warm war and then became a cold war. That's what I see happening here. I don't see permanent peace being established. What I see is reality, realpolitik clicking in, and you're going to see nations, making decisions about their future. I don't think the Gulf Arab states are going to be, saying, "Oh, we're safe behind an American umbrella of security" anymore. They're going to be looking for alternative security arrangements. I don't see Iran, being invited back into the Western economy anytime soon, but that's okay. They'll make adjustments by, realigning themselves with the East. The United States will be happy with just keeping the flow of oil going, but they're not going to make the concessions that Iran would seek. And so you're going to have a whole bunch of things not happening, and that's going to define the new reality. And the new reality will be founded on the notion that both sides need to maximize the economic potential that they can accrue in this compromised situation. The Strait of Hormuz, being open, but always has the potential of being closed. The United States has military forces, poised to strike. Every once in a while they do strike, and then that causes a tanker to get hit, and then they stop. I think this is the permanent state of affairs until we get a political change in the United States. And of course that will hopefully happen sometime in November, and it manifests itself with a new Congress on January 1st and the termination of Donald Trump as a political power here in the United States. But I don't see the United States capable of peace. And of course we're aligned with Israel, which is totally incapable of peace. So, that's just reality. I don't see peace happening. I just see a permanent state of lukewarm war.
And speaking of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu has said in the last 24 hours that Israel is ready to go back to war with Iran whenever they give the green light to themselves, not needing the United States. This is what Netanyahu claims. What does all of this mean, though, from what you just said, and this factor of Israel for not just Iran but Lebanon and the entire fronts? Because that clause number one, if we have lukewarm war, it's likely that there is a pretty hot war going on in Lebanon. No cessation there, and of course we have the disaster of the U.S. Israel Lebanon deal that happened since the last time we spoke. Your thoughts and reactions?
I just need to remind your audience, and I probably don't need to remind them, that Lebanon has beat Israel several times in the past, that Israel is incapable of defeating Lebanon, hasn't shown itself capable of defeating Lebanon, is currently losing to Lebanon on the battlefield. And that when this ends, it'll end with Israel being kicked out of Lebanon. That's how this ends. There's no other ending. How we get there, how long it takes, is a different question. But the stupid games being played by Israel right now, where with the Americans backing, they've bought a Lebanese presidency, which is then say they've normalized relations with Israel to the extent that Lebanon now greenlights Israel's continued occupation of Lebanon. Therefore, it's not an occupation. Therefore, Hezbollah loses all legitimacy. I mean, this kind of stupidity only reinforces the absolute legitimacy of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is today far more legitimate in the eyes of many Lebanese than the Lebanese government, because Hezbollah is the only organization today willing to fight and die for protection of the sovereign territorial integrity of Lebanon. Where's the Lebanese army? Playing stupid games. So Hezbollah is not going to quit, and Iran will never quit supporting Hezbollah, and this is just the reality of it. Israel will be defeated, and eventually this defeat will manifest itself in the political demise of Bibi Netanyahu, and then Israel will have to go into a post-Bibi Netanyahu spin where anything is possible. Remember, in September of 2023, prior to October 7th, the president of Israel was warning everybody that Israel's on the cusp of civil war, not civil disobedience, civil unrest, civil war. That means Jew killing Jew inside Israel. That's where they were. That's where they still are. Netanyahu's been able to, use the security argument as a mechanism to hold Israel together, but he's now run out of places he can go to war with. And if he continues, there will be economic consequences, national security consequences, and political consequences. Netanyahu one day very soon is going to not be the prime minister, whether he dies of natural causes, whether he's killed by an Iranian strike, whether he is kicked out of office and arrested, or he's kicked out of office and allowed to retire peacefully. There won't be a prime minister named Bibi Netanyahu. And when that happens, Israel right now, I don't believe is capable of readily replacing him. He has been a cult of personality for such a long time now that Israel is defined by his presence. And when you remove him, there will be a vacuum created, and that vacuum can probably cause Israel to implode politically. And that's the future of Israel. There's no more greater Israel. I mean, they can talk about it all they want, but it's not going to happen. Israel's in retrograde now. Israel's as strong as it's ever going to get. And from now on, it's just going to get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker as it feeds upon itself, because there is no future for Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu has made that a harsh reality for Israel. And so, in a way, Hezbollah and Iran have the upper hand. Of course, we have to deal with the day-to-day reality of the information war that's being waged by, pro-Israeli elements in the social media camp and mainstream media who seek to suppress alternative voices so that it appears that there isn't support, and that they suppress an alternative reality. When I say alternative reality, alternative meaning fact-based as opposed to the fantasy-based reality that's promulgated by Israel and their pro-Western allies here in Western mainstream media. But the Israelis are operating on pure propaganda, and that can only carry you so far. At some point in time, reality rules. Truth matters, and Hezbollah will, emerge from this victorious, not only militarily against Israel, but this will enhance their standing politically inside Lebanon. Remember, Hezbollah is a political party now. They have people in government, and they are a very important part of the government. And because they're the only ones maintaining faith with the structural integrity of Lebanon, they're going to have far more credibility going forward than President Aoun or any of his Christian Sunni co-conspirators. And that's what they did. They conspired against Lebanon and supporting this non-deal deal with Israel.